Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to episode number 74 of the Primetime Rundown right here on the Eastern Observer. Our show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC alongside my guys Rob DeLuca and Mike Szabo. I'm Joey Jarzynka. Ian Schraier is on assignment once again tonight. He'll be back with us on our December 3rd episode, so it should be he'll be having a nice Thanksgiving while we're here working our butts off and doing our thing, carrying on our way. And Rob DeLuca, good to see you, sir. How are things on your end?
Everything's good here in New Jersey. You can't really complain too much. Thanksgiving's around the corner. It's one of the best holidays this country celebrates. It's a great time for families to come together and really enjoy themselves, just like when we come together every week, almost every week, and bring a great show. We've got a lot of content tonight. Mike Szabo back with us as always. A great time. We've got Sweeney Murdy on. Sweeney Murdy on. Yeah, and then we've got Helene Elliott coming on later. So it's gonna be a very packed and fun show.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Szabo, everybody. Mike, how are you, sir? Good to see you back here on this Friday evening.
Yeah, great to be back. Things are going well. We all have our group chat and all. My day was absolutely made just a couple of minutes ago with the St. John's women's soccer game. So things are going really great.
That's really great to hear. So, ladies and gentlemen, as Rob DeLuca was saying, we'll get you our rundown in just a few short moments. But as we do always in the beginning, our show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Be sure to download their newest album, which is called Free Cake, out now. Play loud on the following platforms: Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, and Spotify. And also, if you have not already, please subscribe to us on the following platforms: Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, as well as YouTube by searching I-95 Sports Network, as well as the Eastern Observer. So our rundown includes WFAN, New York Yankees beat reporter for WFAN 660 AM and 101.9 FM here in New York, Sweeney Murdy. He will be joining us in just a few short moments. And then later on in the program, we are going to be welcoming in Los Angeles Times sports columnist who covers the Anaheim Ducks out west in SoCal, Helene Elliott. She will be talking about how the Anaheim Ducks went on an 8-game winning streak, but yesterday that came to a close when the Carolina Hurricanes took them down at the Honda Center by a score of 2-1. So, ladies and gentlemen, of course, as we always do, we do have Sweeney Murdy on, and let us get you that right now, as we had Ian Schraier on this morning, and that's also when we had Sweeney Murdy on as well. Please, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy, and we will see you in just a few short moments. Sweeney Murdy, everybody, WFAN sports writer. Time rundown. WFAN Yankees beat reporter for WFAN 660 AM here in New York, Sweeney Murdy, a good friend of the New York Pro Scouts as well. Sweeney, good to see you again, sir. It's been a couple of years since I've seen you, but how are things with you on your side?
I think it's been a couple of years since anybody's seen me. I don't go anywhere. But it's fun. It's good. This is the way we see each other now, and it's fun. We're doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get things started here, Sweeney. The first thing I want to start off with, obviously, the New York Yankees going through a whole bunch of changes with, the big question, obviously, is the payroll, is the Starling Marte rumors, as well as possibly who might take over at shortstop. Could it be Corey Seager? Could it be somebody else out there, like Carlos Correa? But after those comments made about the captain, I don't know if that's going to happen. What do you see here in terms of this early hot stove here for the New York Yankees?
I mean, I think anything's possible. It's all open and available to you out there. The Yankees made a point in 2021 of staying under the luxury tax threshold. And anytime they do that, it's usually with the idea of resetting their tax structure and then having the ability to go over it to sign certain free agents. And we've seen them do that, very recently in the last, well, I guess not as recently anymore, but if you remember, they've gone through some big expenditures. The year they blew it out to get Tanaka and McCann and Ellsbury in here. And they've had some other years where they've added payroll and gone after some guys. Just Garrett Cole 2 years ago is a pretty big expenditure. Yeah. So any of these, when you have something that is a clear need, and I think you should listen, the Yankees at one point, you go back, they had a need for a catcher, and they signed Brian McCann, I think, to the richest deal a catcher ever had at that point.
Yep.
They had a need, and they signed Garrett Cole to the richest pitching contract. So when you're talking already about having a need, you have to keep all of those options open and available. And they've made clear that shortstop is a need, and they signaled it in September by moving Gleyber Torres. But I think catcher and center field are also areas of need for this team that I'm waiting to see how they address. And I think they're going to need to, maneuver the bullpen a little bit too. I'm actually I don't think they would do it, but I think I think an interesting idea would be to try to get something for Aroldis Chapman. If you ate some of that money, hand him off. Let's say of the $16 million he's owed, hand off $10 million to somebody else for 1 year of a premier closer who's still very effective over the course of a regular season. I think that's something that's attractive. Jonathan Loaizaga is somebody who I think could slide into that closer's role, kind of the way you went with Mariano Rivera from 96 to 97. And it helps protect Loaizaga's arm because the closer role is so regulated, how often you appear, when you appear, much more so differently than a guy who's in that swing role like Loaizaga. So I don't think they'd entertain that idea. I mean, I think they would think about it, but I just don't think they'd ever do it. But that would be something interesting to me. I think catcher, center field, shortstop, and definitely some pitching. Those are the areas of need here. And, I mean, anything's open and available at this point. It really is.
Ian,
Sweeney, sorry about that, Joe. Sweeney, I think you had mentioned already pitching was the first place you spoke a lot about the bullpen. I want to talk a little bit about the starting pitching end, and thank you so much for taking some time with us here. The first big shoe to drop only came just the other day with respect to Justin Verlander, him re-signing in Houston. The Yankees had put an offer out there on the table. He decides to stay in Houston, and we know the concerns with the Yankee rotation outside of Garrett Cole. What does Verlander signing in Houston do for Cashman's plans to top the rotation? Do we see a reunion with a Corey Kluber? Where do they go?
Yeah, I think they honestly have a lot of good options already. I think one of the things you've seen trading for Jameson Taillon is kind of part of the way Cashman likes to operate, where he's looking for controllable pitchers. You saw him do it with James Paxton a couple of years ago, and you've seen him do it with a bunch of guys. When you have a deep prospect base, I think you're always looking to try to trade for starting pitching. And I think that's what the Yankees have done to their advantage with the numbers of potential with prospects that they have, and try to trade for pitchers. Now, listen, they haven't turned into all-stars, they haven't turned into Hall of Famers, but you're trying to fill innings, and I think they did so with Taillon last year. I would think you look at some, listen, top of my head here, what are you looking at? You're looking at Cole and Severino at the top of your rotation already. Severino back healthy. That's pretty significant. Mm-hmm. You're looking at Taillon and Montgomery right away. You're looking at Cortez and Herman, and you haven't seen Clark Schmidt yet. You've got Mike King and Luis Heel. Now some of these guys might be people you trade, but you have a number of quality options here, I think, to fill out a rotation with, let's remember, Cole and Severino at the top. So I don't know if they necessarily need to go sign Corey Kluber again. I think you saw just the concerns of him, staying healthy during the course of a year.
Yeah.
Listen, would it be fun to see them make a run at Max Scherzer? Yeah, of course. I don't know that would end positively. I mean, he would sign with the Yankees, but we'll see where that goes. But I think starting pitching is an area where you're always looking to add. I don't think it's the kind of year where you're signing Tanaka or Cole or desperate to get somebody at the top of the rotation because of what you already have. You want to add to it for sure, but I don't think they're as desperate as they have been in years past.
Do you think, Sweeney, that, and go back to your point regarding Severino, how important it is to have him at the top of that rotation, but also the fact that he hasn't had a fully healthy season in 2 years, do you think does that play any part of a factor in saying that having Cole and Severino at the top of the rotation is as big as you say?
So I think that he managed to come back. Okay, and made it through. He had a couple of setbacks during the course of the year, which meant he came back a little bit later than you anticipated. But I mean, you're talking about a guy that's coming back from Tommy John. Okay, I mean, listen, you mentioned Justin Verlander. Well, he would be coming back from Tommy John, and he'd be basically 18 months removed from that. He has a deeper resume, and he's going to the Hall of Fame, but it doesn't change the fact that he's coming back. I mean, listen, Verlander would be coming off of a Tommy John surgery situation. He'd be about 18 months removed from it. So you're still talking about a guy coming back from that, albeit a guy who has, Hall of Fame resume compared to Luis Severino. I think you have to, look at him the way they look at what healthy Luis Severino is. And it's different than a guy who's just coming back from that and you haven't seen him pitch yet. I mean, he's going to be, 24 months removed. That's a healthy pitcher. And you know who Luis Severino is. And I think listen, would you rather, I mean, you're locked in it's about $10 million from Severino, but, Noah Syndergaard just got $21 million.
Yeah.
And he's pitched basically the same amount the last 2 years as Luis Severino has. So people think that there's, the Angels seem to think there is a pretty significant upside to Syndergaard. And you've got Severino. I think you have to feel really good about Luis Severino in that 2 spot. Not to say that you couldn't, slot everybody in and bump him back to 3, but let's remember who Luis Severino is. I'll just go back, and it's been a couple of years. I know there's lots of injuries since then, but I can go back to 2018 when he pitched a game in Philadelphia against the Phillies, and he blew their doors off. It was in June, dominated the Phillies. The next day, people around the Phillies are talking to me saying, we haven't seen anybody pitch like that against this team all year. They're in the same division with Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer. And they told me they hadn't seen anybody do to them what Luis Severino did. So I think that's telling, and I think we have to remember what kind of pitcher you're getting back healthy next year.
Great point.
That's definitely something to watch out for.
The other rumor that's really been swirling around, Sweeney, is regarding the upgrade for the Yankees at first base, and the name that keeps floating around is Matt Olson from the Oakland Athletics. And if this was a move the Yankees were to make, it would be by trade. Would they be trading prospects? Would they be trading players like Andujar, like Clint Frazier? Has there been any steam picking up around the Matt Olson rumors at all?
I mean, I think, you're probably going to see some teams right now. You're going up against deadline with roster protection. That plays a big part of it too. Andujar is interesting. He's not the same chip that he was 2 years ago. You're talking about service time that's been eaten up, and you're deeper, closer to free agency. Even though he's been injured, that's eating up service time. Now, that's a big consideration for a team like the Oakland A's. Although they are looking for somebody who, fits that description of major league ready. Miguel Andujar is major league ready, but where do you play him exactly? I think he's, you'll find a place for him to play if he hits like he did a couple of years ago. Frazier is not as attractive a piece. You're not getting any value for him because of what turned into a lost year here this year. And there's still some mystery involved surrounding really, what really happened to Clint Frazier. And I don't think you're going to get fair value for him at this point that way. I think if you're going to make that deal, Matt Olson's a really good player. I think he's a better fit for the Yankees than, say, Matt Chapman, who's also available. You'd have to think really hard, probably about trading one of your shortstop prospects. And I don't know if the Yankees are there, but it kind of goes hand in hand. That's why you're kind of operating on parallel tracks here as far as, if you're going to sign a Corey Seager or a Carlos Correa, then maybe you can afford to trade one of your prospects to upgrade somewhere else. And it might be and it's just going to be something you have to live with. You have to be okay with trading a good player somewhere else. And I think that's sometimes where we get lost, where we think every trade has to be fleecing the other team to get the great player. No, you have to give up something good sometimes. And it's okay. It's actually good if that player becomes good, because it speaks well to your system and your talent. If everybody you trade turns out to be nobody, well, nobody's going to want to trade with you anymore because you don't have good players. If you trade good players away, then you're going to end up that's currency, right? It's money in your pocket, and it's either money in your pocket or it's getting you something you want for your house or your car or whatever you want. Okay, that's what prospects are. I think they'd have to think seriously about trading Oswald Peraza on a deal like that. I don't think they're even close to trading Anthony Volpe. I don't think they're close to trading Peraza either, but that's where, if you're going to trade for Matt Olson, you probably have to give up somebody like that. Luis Heel is somebody that I would think probably is drawing some consideration. Clark Schmidt probably drawing some consideration. These are the kinds of guys that it would take. But you're talking about, affecting the, kind of taking over first base and impacting the overall balance of the lineup. I think that's something you really have to strongly consider.
Sweeney, so let's go to the free agent side of things. Obviously, the Yankees are always heavily involved with free agent talks. Corey Seager, probably the big name right now. But you mentioned that the Yankees need to address a need in center field because, as we know, Aaron Hicks seems to struggle to stay healthy. It's very unfortunate for a player like Hicks, who can be very important when he is healthy. But nevertheless, Brian Cashman did meet with the media last night, and someone that was brought up was center fielder Brett Gardner. And it looks like Brett Gardner has expressed interest in playing in 2022, and he obviously does not want to go anywhere else besides the Yankees. Is there any sort of traction there? Is the Brett Gardner party going to continue in New York?
Well, if he is here, he is an extra piece, not the starter. So, that's not a move that you make right now. Remember, last year he didn't get signed until very late, and so it's not you're in a spot here where he's probably going to wait as long as possible to see if he can play with the Yankees. So if you're negotiating with him, you have time with him. And if he goes somewhere else, well, you're talking about a bench role that, okay, then you look for other options. Brett Gardner does want to play. That desire was expressed shortly right after the season ended. It didn't take long. Gardner does want to play. The Yankees obviously know what they have in him, and we'll see how the rest of it shapes up here. There's a very good center fielder available in the free agent market, Starling Marte. Yeah. And, the Yankees are in on him to whatever degree we will see and see where that goes. But if they get another starting center fielder, it pushes Aaron Hicks into a, fourth outfielder kind of role. And that affects the rest of your roster too. I think that's the smarter way to go. As much as I have understood and talked a lot about the potential of Aaron Hicks, coming off a very significant injury and unsure of his status to really start the year and how healthy he can be to start the year, I think it's a tenuous position to go into. Listen, I've seen how dynamic a player he is. Unfortunately, he just hasn't been healthy enough to stay on the field for long stretches of time these last couple of years. So I think it's incumbent on the Yankees to have a more significant, stable spot in center field, person to man center field. And strong up the middle is what we're talking about with championship teams, right? Catcher, shortstop, center field. Well, the Yankees have question marks at all three of them. They have to address all three of them in some form or fashion. So I think it's wise to explore center field, especially when you have somebody who can be as dynamic as Starling Marte, who they've talked about a lot in the past, trying to acquire. I think that's something you have to do. And, you fall back on Hicks and talk to Brett Gardner in, January, February as things come out. But I think it's something you have to try to address at the beginning.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think that, obviously shortstop, the solution would be Corey Seager. I don't think there's really much to say there other than the Yankees are actively trying to get Corey Seager. They're trying to sign him into the Bronx. I'm sure it would be a very heavy contract. I want to talk a little more about the catcher's position because it seems like that the Yankees almost sort of firmed up their belief in Gary Sanchez this season. That's what they want to do moving forward. But Sweeney, how do you really feel about that being the possibility here?
I took a good long look at this last winter, right about this time, when you're coming up to the idea of, okay, do you tender Gary Sanchez a contract? Do you move forward? He's in arbitration. Where do they go with 2 years of control? Now it's 1 year of control. And the questions are pretty similar. There's a lot on his plate, and he's now going to make $8 million, probably $7 to $8 million, I think, in his final year of arbitration before he heads into free agency. What made sticking with Gary Sanchez the smart choice for the last couple of years was the potential offensively behind the plate, coupled with the cost, the salary. It was still very reasonable as he was in early stages of arbitration, and the cost to replace him in that position would have been a lot different. So you know what kind of a player he can be offensively and the potential he's shown, and you're still hoping to get that out of him. Now you have 1 year left to free agency. He's going to make roughly $8 million in arbitration, and it's still pretty inexpensive when you're talking about a starting position player who has all-star potential. But I think you've probably seen him. I think you've probably seen the Yankees are not going to go much beyond this. They're not going to sign Gary Sanchez to a 7-year extension.
Right.
That part's not happening, right? So, or not even extend, into free agency, into his 30s. So, I think it's worth exploring upgrading that position now. Now you're pretty much entrenched in the idea, or they seem to be entrenched in the idea they're not moving beyond 2022 with Gary Sanchez. So I don't know what their options are right now. You see who's available, but I think through trade possibilities, you're thinking about the idea of, okay, how can we split up catcher and get 162 games? But it's all part of one big puzzle, because you counted on a certain level of offensive production from catcher, which other teams do not get.
Yep.
If you're going to downgrade offensively at that position, you have to then figure out how you're getting the offense in other positions to make up for it. Because you can always, Gio Urshela is not a prototypical third baseman as far as offensive productivity, but you could get away with that because you were getting Gleyber Torres at shortstop and Gary Sanchez behind the plate. Well, now Gleyber Torres is at second base and Gary Sanchez, you're still going to you have to make up this offensive production somehow. This is still an offensive game. And, surprise, the Yankees' offense was the biggest story, the biggest trouble spot in 2021.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got to figure out how to make that up. Seager or Schraier, shortstop would be a big part of that. But catcher is if you're going to lose the offensive catcher, you got to figure out how to make it up other spots too. So first base, center field, bounce back from Joey Gallo in left field. I don't know. Those are the kinds of things that you kind of have to look at. But I just cautioned about. Long-winded, I'm sorry, but it's the idea of not looking at every individual position in a vacuum. It's about how the whole roster and lineup fits together. And I think it was always a smart play when he was in relative cost control to keep banking on Gary Sanchez's potential. But once it's going to start costing you a lot of money to keep him, now you have to weigh it differently. And I think we know, it seems pretty reasonable to see which direction they're going here. And if they choose to do it now rather than play one more year out of Gary Sanchez, I would think that's fairly reasonable. That all makes sense to you.
So, Sweeney, just two more questions before we let you go. And I think the big thing here was something that DeLuca brought up just a few seconds ago about, with Corey Seager in that shortstop position, where really in terms of, I would say a sense of comfortableness and really, just feeling that shortstop is set to go for years to come after Derek Jeter retires, after Jacoby Ellsbury and that failed experiment. Okay, well, Aaron Hicks going to be signed to a lucrative extension with a club option in 2026. That hasn't gone well. So, now I want to look back at the shortstop position, and there was some rumors and a couple of reports going around that Brian Cashman he claims that they might have just a little stopgap shortstop until the prospects are ready to go. And just like how you were kind of figuring out this, this puzzle that they're trying to really connect the dots with, what are your thoughts in terms of, is there a short-term solution at shortstop that Brian Cashman can go out and find on the free agent market? Or is it somebody that maybe like not a Didi Gregorius, but someone similar to that? Obviously not a Marcus Semien, because he's going to cost a lot of money. But is there someone out there that maybe you see that could be a short-term solution at short?
Not necessarily as a solution. I think, I think you have to play every side of this game right now.
Yeah.
When you're trying to see what's available. And it could still very well be Corey Seager, Carlos Correa type of situation, right? I think the discussion I would have to have now, let's say with Corey Seager, is, are you willing to move to third base in a year or two?
Yeah.
And that's where I would, because I think you're going to get to a point where, let's say, Gio Urshela plays himself out of that spot or prices himself out of that spot, and you have a prospect ready and you can start moving the pieces around with one of your shortstops available. And the problem is there's no guarantee. You don't listen. This is thinking about, it's hard to play this game because we know what Derek Jeter became. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to think about it in terms of, in 1994, think about what you want to do for shortstop, okay? You have this prospect who has a lot of potential, and you're trying to hold a spot for him. How do you play that game? Because it's still not there. And until he's there performing it, you're not going to believe it. You're not going to really, it's hard to sell that to fans. All I can tell you is I've heard people talk about Anthony Volpe. The way I've heard people talk about Volpe, I haven't heard them talk about a Yankees prospect like this in a very long time.
Wow.
And Oswald Peraza is a guy who people say, can play the position really well and is going to hit. So they have some options here. So, listen, as a fan, do you want to see one of these guys come up and take this and maybe spend $300 million on pitchers or outfielders instead of a shortstop?
Right.
I can tell you this, just in regards to Volpe. Here's what I kind of try to relate to people. You hear things about him the way you heard things about Derek Jeter, okay, in 1993 and 1994. That doesn't mean Anthony Volpe is going to be shortstop for the Yankees for 20 years, get 3,400 hits, win 5 World Series, and walk into the Hall of Fame. That's not what it means. It means that at the same age, 19, 20, there are a lot of similar qualities and ability to see this guy being a good player. There's a lot more that goes into what happens in the next 20 years. But when you have that kind of player, you're dreaming on potential and you're dreaming on what's happening there. So, yeah, I think a lot of what they're going to do at shortstop is with the idea of, listen, in 2024, Anthony Volpe could be the starting shortstop for the New York Yankees, and for a long time after that. And in cost control, the thing that, remember, the Yankees with their core, they won most of those championships while they were making relatively low salaries. And when they made big salaries, they didn't win quite as much. That's what the great misfortune was with the Yankees in this new era of baby bombers that failed. They didn't win in the cost control years. They didn't win when Aaron Judge was making $800,000. He's going to make almost $20 million this year and still doesn't have a World Series appearance, let alone a ring. Sanchez and Torres, the baby bombers are making a lot of money. Remember 1996, 98, 99, you're still talking about pre-arbitration years for all those guys. So that's what you're ultimately striving for. So I think you can't just cavalierly throw away the idea that you have 2 really, really good shortstop prospects and then say, you know what, forget it. We're just going to spend $300 million on this guy. I'm not really giving you a concrete answer because I don't think there is one yet. That's the problem. Anybody that tells you they're going to sign this guy, that's it, is lying because they don't know, and the players themselves don't know. So I think I'm just trying to give everybody things to think about when all these decisions are getting made.
Now, Sweeney, my last question for you and our last question for your time here on the Primetime Rundown, which we can't thank you enough for coming on here tonight and being a part of our show for a few minutes. Sweeney, I want to go back to center field because, we brought up earlier about, or I brought up earlier about with Jacoby Ellsbury, and I brought up about with Aaron Hicks too, and I brought up about how 2026 is that club option year, and he's making $10 million. And up until that point. And what we continuously hear over and over again is, well, now there's pieces where, well, maybe if you trade for Matt Olson now, where are those pieces going to go if you have Giancarlo Stanton at DH? Who's going to be playing second base if Gleyber Torres is not the answer at shortstop? If Aaron Hicks cannot find rhythm, or if he is another, I don't want to call him a failure, but if he cannot stay healthy in center field, do you expect a shuffling in the outfield? And would you start seeing that maybe in spring training? What do you see on that front?
Well, I mean, let's see what they do first. But I feel like if you're going to get a center fielder, then Aaron Hicks just becomes your fourth outfielder.
That's an expensive fourth outfielder.
Well, of course it is, but that's kind of what you're on right now. I mean, you've had expensive DHs. You've had they paid Alex Rodriguez an entire year not to be on their roster at all. It's kind of, you're just forced into this situation.
Yeah.
But you're talking about a guy that's a switch hitter that can play defense, and maybe that you're eliminating wear and tear and trying to stay healthy. It's a pretty significant injury he's coming back from. Okay, this is this. I understand that he has had trouble staying healthy, but let's remember how significant this is a wrist injury that requires surgery, and the recovery time. It's not like he's taking longer to recover from this than somebody else. It's not like this is a 4-week injury and he's been out a year. You have surgery for this injury, you're out for the year. That's what he's coming back from. So to sit there and say throw him back in center field and expect 140 games out of there, I don't think that's realistic. So I think he has to become your fourth outfielder here and get a stronger center field option. And just the idea for me about like making center field a priority, I sketched this out a couple of days ago, and from 2014 until through 2021, the last 8 years, Jacoby Ellsbury still has the most games started in center field of anybody on the Yankees over the course of the last 8 years, and he hasn't played since 2017. Okay, he started 472 games. Brett Gardner could start every game in center field in 2022 for the Yankees and still be short of the number of Jacoby Ellsbury's played since 2014. So I think that this is what makes center field a priority to me, and not just kind of reshuffling the Hicks and Gardner thing. I think you have to make it a priority. Just as big a priority as shortstop is.
Well, I cannot wait to see what's going to happen in terms of the hot stove with the New York Yankees and really all across the AL East, because we got to see some movement already with Toronto, who is all of a sudden ready to splurge money. The Los Angeles Dodgers, could they be outbidding the New York Yankees, or will they be outbidding? It's all a matter of when, and the hot stove is just heating up. Ladies and gentlemen, WFAN's New York Yankees beat reporter, 660 AM here in New York, Sweeney Murdy, and of course, a good friend of the New York Pro Scouts Association. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the big thing also here with Sweeney Murdy, obviously, we cannot thank him enough for coming on, but I just want to get a quick take here from Mike Szabo, who had to work today. Otherwise, he would have been on as well. We had our good friend Ian Schraier on with us, obviously, early on before he went on assignment. And Mike, I think the big thing here is the shortstop position that the New York Yankees have really been, lackluster in that department since Didi Gregorius signed in Philadelphia with former manager Joe Girardi. And now we're beginning to see that, shortstop, there might be a hole there, and we don't know for how long. I don't know. What did you take away from Sweeney's conversation there?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think the Yankees, I think there are, as it normally is at this time of year, a lot of cannon fodder is going around with the reports. The Yankees, listen, Brian Cashman has been around for a long time. You really have to be really knowledgeable of cash speak, as we'll all say. You really, this time of year, you really have to watch what he says in terms of trying to gauge on what the Yankees are doing. Some reports that are going to be thrown out by reporters are going to be off, and maybe the Yankees throw that out there intentionally. I think the whole stopgap thing would be absolutely ridiculous. You are not going to be seeing a free agency shortstop class like this for a long, long time, and you haven't seen it beforehand for a long time. And if you're just going to let all of these great shortstops and these great classes pass by for a stopgap, I'm sorry, that is just incompetence of the highest order. Everybody wants to talk about prospects. Anthony Volpe and Oswald Peraza. If you brought up those two names to Yankee fans last year, they did not know who in the blue hell they were. They did not. They had great seasons this year. They look like they're going to be really good prospects, but that's all they are right now is just prospects. I've seen reports, too, of that Peraza could wind up being a good third baseman, Major League Scouts are saying. Volpe could wind up being the Yankees love him at short, want him to be at short, but other scouts have said he'll be best long term at second base. So I don't really think the prospect should determine what the Yankees do at the shortstop position from there. You talk about Corey Seager. Corey Seager is a guy, you look at his frame, and eventually as he gets older in age, you're probably going to move him over to third base anyway in the latter part of the contract. So I wouldn't see why anything with the prospect should really affect that. I think that is the shortstop position is their main priority by far, and they have to hit on one of these guys.
And it's very funny you bring up about how Corey Seager towards once he gets older would be most likely would be moving to his brother's natural position at third base. And, what you see obviously would also be possibly, not even possibly, but most likely would be an outbidding where the Los Angeles Dodgers would be outbidding for Corey Seager's services, most likely, as you brought up in our group chat about Justin Turner potentially moving to second base, Corey Seager going to third, and Trey Turner staying at short or going to shortstop, and a complete reshuffling out in the Chavez Ravine. And I don't really know how, a stopgap would help the Yankees. And I think also with Andrew Velazquez being claimed off of waivers, I think was a massive loss for this Yankees team, where he really could have filled that void for a while if maybe there could have been someone to come in and maybe not break the bank, but also play shortstop for the Yankees until either a prospect comes up, which is what reports have suggested. That's what Brian Cashman and the Yankees brass want to do. They want to wait for these prospects to come up. Why? Because they don't know if they really want to spend over that $210 million luxury tax threshold, which most likely will be increasing following the CBA talk, since there is no collective bargaining agreement. That one just expired after World Series Game 6 just a couple of weeks ago. So
it expires on December 1st. So we got a couple of days. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely, so there is more time actually. So, but
the lockout is definitely coming.
Yeah, not much more time there, as I guess I consider it, since they won't be playing another game under the current CBA. So that would be pretty much it. So let's keep moving forward here, fellas, and let's go into our next topic, which is DeLuca's favorite topic of the week, and that is the St. John's Red Storm taking a loss, unfortunately, by a grand total of 2 points to the Indiana Hoosiers. And Mike, I want to start with you just before we get to DeLuca, because I know DeLuca will definitely have what really grinds his gears moment against a certain crew, if you will. We won't go into it just yet, but we got a chance to see this St. John's team really go, just 40 minutes of hell on defense, and their offense really came out. But on defense in the first half was really not great. their first half in general was really not great. They began to wake up in the second half, but that was also without a key player in their lineup due to a flagrant 2 foul.
Yeah, I mean, it was a Jekyll and Hyde game really for St. John's. It's a first half, I mean, borderline nightmare first half of what you wanted on the road in an extremely tough environment for a relatively new team in terms of the collection of pieces and in a big non-conference game. And so, like I said, borderline disaster. I wouldn't say their defense was terrible, actually, but Indiana really didn't take advantage, and ultimately they did win the game. But Indiana could have made it a much bigger lead in that first half. Did not shoot well from the line. Wound up missing a lot of opportunities that St. John's gave them, and somehow, I mean, only 12 points, but 12 points is still quite a bit. But St. John's were lucky that they were not down by like 20 or more at the halftime break, because it just seemed like they had no clue on. They couldn't run anything on offense. Give credit to that Hoosier defense. Really didn't allow for any sort of serious penetration. But St. John's were really settling in that first half on offense. Just looked really out of sorts. And of course, the Montez Mathis ejection just changed everything. I mean, listen, we could argue flagrant 1, flagrant 2, or whatnot. It was a stupid play to begin with. At that point, you made a dumb pass. Just take the error. Work back on the next possession. Just let the guy go up for the layup. Take the 2 points and move on to the next possession. That was a really silly play. Unfortunately, the guy Trey Galloway, I think his name was, unfortunately broke his wrist on the fall. Will be out. And he'll have surgery on it, be out for the next 6 weeks. So sad for him. But personally, there was no intent on that. I'm not sure. We were doing a live stream on WSJU Sports from the radio station where we were doing a live watch-along of the game. And in the moment, I couldn't believe they came to a flagrant 2 decision, given the fact that they went to video review. And you could see, really, I mean, yeah, it's a hard foul. It's a really it's a really bad fall. You see Montez hooks the guy's arm and everything, but there was not malicious intent on there. I didn't think that it fit the criteria of a flagrant 2. But you think about how Montez Mathis started off that game. He started out with the quick 5 points, was looking really good. Obviously, he's had time previously with Rutgers in the Big Ten. He knows Indiana, knows that building. I mean, who knows what could have happened if that ejection never occurred, what he would have been able to provide St. John's defensively and offensively. The difference in the game was only 2 points. Imagine if he was still around and was able to get into double figures and scoring. St. John's numerically, you put the numbers together, might win the game. But in the offense, the second half, they picked it up. They finally understood. This was the biggest thing that was really bothering me throughout the entire game, is the continued desire to want to stick with the full court press. And in that situation, it was not working whatsoever. Indiana was just saying, give me more of it, because they're not the greatest of shooting teams, but the full court press, they just got through they were able to work around the press really well, and they found their shooters in the corner for open shots. And I don't know why it took them so long for St. John's to figure that out. But when they did in the second half, what happened? They went on a run, and then we had a wire-to-wire game for most of that latter part of the game. And, a couple points here and there, you think a couple of plays. The final play, I'm not sure what the original scheme was supposed to be, but a bad pass there forced Julian Champagny into a very tough shot. But the biggest positive was that St. John's, I don't think that in terms of the teams that they've had in the past couple of years, that would have been as close of a game as it was, given the way they started out. You're thinking, if this was a team from St. John's in the last 5 years in that sort of situation, they're down at halftime by 20. We can all turn the channel and go to something else and just call it a day. But give credit to St. John's, a team with 9 new pieces with high expectations on the road in a very tough environment, one of college basketball's toughest environments, only the third game of the season, fight back from 12 points, as many as 14 behind to Indiana, and made it a game. I don't like moral victories, but that's something to build off of for the rest of the season.
DeLuca, what are your thoughts on this game? I know you were very, you were not happy, and your gears were grinded. There is no doubt about it, and rightfully so. When there was some, and again, here we don't want to really throw officials under the bus, but I mean, it's unfortunate because, you get to see James Breeding, who is a Big East official who, works around the entire NCAA. He's seen his fair share of contests, but also for those, just before we get to DeLuca, 2 years ago in the 2019 Big East tournament, we obviously got to see Seton Hall and Marquette, and punches were thrown between Marcus Howard, between Miles Powell. Sandro Mamukelashvili was there in that scrum as well, in addition to obviously Theo John on the other side. So there was just, and in addition, there was, I believe, no kidding, 50 fouls called, 50. 29 for Seton Hall and 27 for Marquette. And I'll never forget, I was at that contest, and I sat there for nearly 4 hours. That game was 4 hours, and the next game did not start until close to 11 o'clock because of what was going on. And there was no control, no discipline over these players, these coaches, whatever it was. Everyone had a complete free-for-all. DeLuca, what did you see there on that call with that flagrant 2? Obviously, it changed the outcome of the game, and you brought this up continuously ad nauseum in our little group message.
Yeah, Mike to put everything to with how this looks for St. John's. I don't like moral victories either, but this is something to build off of. This team's going to be fun to show that they're resilient. They fight back. They don't quit when they go down big. It was a bad first half, and then they fought back and nearly won the game. If Julian Champagnie maybe got a cleaner pass there at the end, maybe he gets a cleaner 3 off and it goes in, and who knows, maybe St. John's wins the game anyway. But St. John's won that game anyway because, look, that it's plain and simple. That's not a flagrant 2. That was, as Mike said, in order to be a flagrant 2, there has to be malicious intent. That is very clearly not what happened. Yes, it was a hard play. If I was the official there, I might have called a flagrant 1. I think it would be fair to say that was a flagrant 1. It was a borderline flagrant 1 call. So how they came away with flagrant 2 there is beyond me. And then, of course, you're seeing common fouls get called one way and not the other, and then that'll frustrate you. But it's very hard to get those calls in Indiana's house. You can't really go into the Hoosier house and beat them and the officials on top of it. It's not a very common occurrence. And unfortunately for the St. John's Red Storm, regardless of their fight, which was a great fight, great end of the game, Julian Champagnie missed that shot by a couple inches, and unfortunately, due to the call, because Montez Mathis is a very, very key player to this St. John's team. He's going to be a very big factor throughout this entire season. Not having him for 35 out of 40 minutes, of course, and you only lose by 2 points, you absolutely win that game if he's in there. That's not even a question. As Mike said, you look at it numerically, no question St. John's wins that game.
Yeah, I mean, and something else that I want to bring up too. This is something big here in terms of with Montez Mathis's usage as well, and he is extremely valuable and a crucial piece to Mike Anderson's 40 minutes of hell type defense. He is crucial to that. We also know about his relationship with Shoes Frank Vitrone. We know about that. He is also a key part to this coaching staff as well. But in addition to, I can't really say so much about Julian Champagnie where, if he were to get that final shot off, maybe, in a different way. I think that there is too much reliability on Champagnie. I think that this year, this team is supposed to be relied on depth. And I think that the way it looks too is that you look at Aaron Wheeler, right, who came in, he was the one player who played against this team, in addition to Montez Mathis as well, who came from a Big Ten school. So they both know how to play in that raucous environment. But Mike, the problem here that I have is that Joel Soriano really has he's come relatively slow from Fordham. Yes, he is a big man. There's no doubt that the front court presence for St. John's has gotten much more visible. But since Tariq Owens, we really still have not gotten to see the defensive structure in the front court that I think Mike Anderson is looking for. And I think, obviously 3 games in, it still has there's a lot of time. But talk about with Aaron Wheeler where, everyone thought that he was going to be a breakout candidate from Purdue. That's, and again, 3 games in, but really against the team that he's played against, he might have a little bit of insight on how to beat this Mike Woodson team, this Woody team.
Well, yeah, I think it was disappointing. I think even for me, I thought he was going to be a key contributor in that game. I even went on
2 from the field. That was it.
Yeah, I went on Thomas Cavanaugh's pregame Twitter space, and I'm like, I'm calling it an Aaron Wheeler 20-piece today because I thought he's going to have that sort of impact, the familiarity. It's a Big Ten team and whatnot, but it's strange. Listen, the foul trouble problems that we saw in the St. Peter's game that didn't cost them, but in that game because they were already well in control in that game. It cost them here a little bit in terms of guys sort of got out of what their rhythm was, or were not able to play as many minutes. I think Wheeler he was not really playing his game, not really getting off of a lot of outside shots, trying to do stuff that's not really him, trying to drive in and get into the basket. It's not really him. He's not really a guy to put the ball on the deck and drive in, and it showed. He was constantly getting blocked and getting blocked off really well defensively by Indiana. So that was a real disappointing problem. I think the reliance on Champagnie, I don't think it's a trend. I think it's just how the situation played out in the game. You talk about some of the guys were really in a lot of foul trouble. Joel Soriano had trouble there as well.
He had 4.
Wheeler had some problems also. Posh Alexander had 2 fouls in the first half, ultimately 4 altogether. Tariq Coburn didn't really play a factor because he got some quick fouls. Some turnovers. Clearly, Mike Anderson didn't see him affecting that game and just sat him. So I think the reliance on Champagnie was really situational in terms of how the flow of the game was going. I think for Joel on the Joel Soriano front, I think we all have to be a bit patient. He played in Fordham. He's very good at Fordham. He's going to be a double machine for this team, but let's focus on defensively first. He played at Fordham in an A-10 conference that it's very different from the Big East. The Big East is a huge step up to what he's seen, and not even just the Big East. Put it this way, he was matched up against. I mean, it's not like it was a slouch. He was matched up against a preseason All-American and Trace Jackson Davis. I mean, it was not a slouch or slam dunk of a matchup for him. I mean, that was a tough matchup. I mean, it was predicted really that Davis was quicker than that was the challenge for St. John's, really scheming that game. You thought Jackson Davis is quicker than Soriano, but too big and too strong for Champagnie and Wheeler. So what are you going to do? And that showed. Soriano had a tough time. But you look at it this way. He's not really going to, the rest of the way this season, he's not going to face a big as talented as Jackson Davis.
No.
So, that's a learning curve for Soriano that he can take the rest of the way. I point out to one play, and I said this on our watch along, I point out to one play that just as a St. John's fan, just makes you go, oh my God, how good it is to have somebody like him, where I think it was when they were struggling early in the first half. Indiana had a couple of buckets. I believe it was Posh or Tariq Coburn had it on the right side, and they just found a situation where Joel could cut off the screen, and you could just be able to lob it into him, and he was able to just get the easy layup. I was like, that's sort of a basket you needed there to stop a run and to at least get some, you know, get your feet under you a little bit in terms of how the game was flowing so badly for St. John's in that first half. And it's like St. John's has never been able to have that sort of play in their arsenal for 20 years. Have a big roll off the screen, dump it over the guy, and just get an easy layup. It was like you never even had that play. That's the kind of things that Joel Soriano is really going to open up offensively for this team. Versatility, being able to rely on somebody in the post. Defensively, I think it's going to come along, and I think Wednesday night was a really big learning curve for him.
See, the problem that I have here is that there's not many marquee matchups for St. John's in this non-conference schedule. And I think that with this loss here, if St. John's were to lose any gimme games like to a DePaul or to a Georgetown, I want to take Marquette out of that equation, because at one point they were, Shaka Smart. He came in, you lost 3/4 of the team, and then all of a sudden, this Marquette Golden Eagles team, they've won 4 in a row to come out of the starting gate. Amazing stuff, great for the conference. But I think the big problem here for St. John's is that one marquee game that you now have left on the schedule is Kansas at a neutral site. And that is at UBS Arena, new home of the New York Islanders.
Joey, yeah, neutral. The game's still in New York. So
Well,
you gotta and Kansas doesn't really travel. Kansas doesn't necessarily travel well outside of their little tri-state area there of Missouri, Kansas, and whatever other states over there.
The problem though is that I think the big issue with that is that where we're at now, this St. John's team, they don't really travel. They really don't travel well outside of campus. And
right. But it's Belmont, UBS Arena, where it is in Belmont, it's basically in Queens at the same time, if you think about it.
Yeah, it's not that
far. You walk 5 seconds to the right, you're in Queens. So.
No. I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that. But the whole thing, though, is that we will see, though, in terms of transportation, in terms of whatnot, how the fan base will make it over to UBS Arena.
Well, of course, Mike Szabo's going to be personally responsible for that for the student section. So
yes, well,
Mike Szabo's personally going to get the students
a
bus from the school.
That will be DSPN, DJ Sutherland. But we'll keep on going with that. I think that in terms of marquee matchups where it gives this St. John's team a good resume going into conference season, they don't have a lot of it because Pitt is so bad. And in the first game, they fell to a bye game, the epitome of brutality. They literally fell in that first game, and right away, St. John's is right on ice in terms of their non-conference schedule. And I think what we obviously got to see in the last season and when this schedule was made, Justin Champagnie, they had no idea what was going to happen with him. They had no idea what was going to happen with Julian Champagnie, and it was supposed to be Champagnie brothers going head-to-head. And that was going to be the big battle in the Gotham Classic. Now it's just Julian Champagnie and St. John's against a lowly Pitt team that is just extremely terrible. The problem here now is that in addition to, you look at the upcoming schedule, Fairleigh Dickinson, St. Francis Brooklyn, Colgate, Monmouth, Fordham, these teams, they are not resume builders. And in order to get that resume builder in non-conference, you may now have no choice but to go into UBS Arena and take down the number 3 team.
I'm not going there.
I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't go there, Joey. I think that they
in
have
a non-conference schedule.
Right. No, in a bad non-conference. No, in the bad non, they got to win every other game. There's no question about it. They have to at minimum go 10-2, and now they are currently on pace to do such a thing. If they win the games they're supposed to, what they have to do against Kansas is do what they did in the second half against Indiana. That's exactly how they have to play Kansas for 40 minutes, and if they do that, they maybe beat them, but I wouldn't bank on it because Kansas is 50 times the team that Indiana is. So as long as St. John's is competitive with them for 40 minutes, this is not This is not a three-way that loves moral victories, but it's something to build off of. As Mike said, you build what St. John's can build off from that second half. If they can build off 40 competitive minutes from Kansas, they're going to cruise right through the rest of that non-conference schedule.
Yes, but the problem that I'm saying is, and I think Mike Szabo will attest to this once I say this, is that nobody cares about moral victories over in Indianapolis. Nobody cares about,
but they're not going to be
about it for about half an hour after that game.
Right. Say that one more time.
I cared about it for about half an hour after that game, and then you got to start, moving on and say you got to pick yourself up off the mat. Yeah.
I'm aware of that, but the problem, what I'm saying though, is that a tournament resume, in order to go to the NCAA tournament, if you are on the verge and the NCAA in that committee looks at a game and they look at Indiana, and if there's a team there that maybe won a game by 2 points or lost the game by 2 points, that St. John's team will be left out of the field of 68. And that's not a good thing, obviously. You want the Johnnies to make it into the tournament, back to the promised land for the first time since 2018-19 against Arizona State, which we eventually know what happened there. It's not a good look. And that's also why when I brought up about the depth of this team too, yes, you're going 10 or 11 deep. And with Montez Mathis, it was supposed to be a 12 deep. And that's actually where I want to move into the next thing here with college basketball. And we're not going to go too deep into it since we have the NFL and Khalid Elliott to deal with later. But I think also with Seton Hall, and continuously as we cover them here on the Eastern Observer, you continuously are now seeing a team that is relying on its depth to move them forward. And I want to go to Rob DeLuca for a quick second, because I know him and we've been talking about this all the time. He's not really a Seton Hall guy at all, and neither am I. But watching them and following them and covering them is a real fun time. And seeing them take down Yale by more than 30 points is something really crucial that a lot of folks are now trying to say maybe, just maybe, this team has some 1992 or even 1989 some blood in there. And this could be Kevin Willard's deepest team in his entire tenure as coach in Seton Hall.
Yeah, Joey, I don't know if I would say it's his most talented. It's definitely one of his deepest, though. It's definitely one
not
of his
most talented.
Yeah, by far from his most talented, but a very deep team. They're a lot of fun. Look, I don't like them. I'm a St. John's fan. I don't like them.
And they took down Michigan.
Right, and they took down the number 4
Michigan
team in the country in their house. A beautiful upset. And it's great for the Big East. That helped the Big East win the Gavitt tip-off games, which I believe hadn't happened in quite a few years.
Ever.
So,
I don't think it's ever happened. No,
never.
because
Yeah, that's why I said never. So, yeah, for the first time ever, the Big East finally takes the Gavitt.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it really shows that this team is deep and they're dangerous. They're a lot better than a lot of teams gave them credit, than a lot of people are giving them credit for. Yes, in the coaches poll, they were finishing 5th, right behind St. John's. But I think that's really gonna be a dogfight this year between St. John's and Seton Hall battling that 4-5 out, because you think about it, Xavier's better than both of them, UConn's better than both of them, Villanova's better than both of them. It's just the way the basketball is played, and just the way if you've been watching all the Big East teams, that's the way you see it happening. So December 20th, which is a month away tomorrow, Prudential Center. That is a place you're going to want to be.
Oh, yeah.
St. John's at Seton Hall. It's going to be a terrific game, a great way to open conference play. And believe me, you'll want to be there. Get there, St. John's fans that are watching. Yeah. Get there. Just get there. It's very easy to get there from New York City. It's very, very simple. You just hop on one train and you're there in 2 stops. All right. It's very
Rob,
easy.
do you really want to pull out up Google Maps? I mean, you really
I'll do it if I have to, Mike. We gotta invade the Rock. Invading Prudential Center is one of the easiest things to do in sports.
Mike, conclude it. You got about 40 seconds.
Yeah, with Seton Hall, I mean, listen, it's a team that does not have a star. Sandro Mamukelashvili is gone, so they do not have a star. But you make up for that by having a real solid group of individuals that come together and form a great collective. They have a really deep team. They have
transfers too.
Yeah, they have some good transfers. They got experience led by Miles Kale and Jared Roden, who just know what you need to do in order to win. They know when you got to make those big shots. They've just got that know-it-all to be able to guide this team going forward.
Yeah, it's really amazing stuff to see what's going on over there, especially when in just a few more days on Monday, we're going to be having the new AP Top 25 poll, week number 3, being released, by the Associated Press. And I would not be surprised if Seton Hall is in that top 25, especially after taking down Michigan on there.
I see them receiving a lot more votes than they've been getting, but I don't think they're coming in.
I don't know, fellas. I don't know. It's very possible.
You can't have 2-3 votes and then be in the top 25 in 1 week. It's not how that works. That's fair. I mean, but we'll definitely see what happens on Monday. That I can definitely. I would say they're getting close to. I'd say they probably get almost 100 votes. They're definitely going to get a lot more.
Let's move forward into the NFL, of course, and let's start off with our best segment of the night, which is Thursday Night Football, which is Rob DeLuca's.
They're gonna nab us for that logo,
as you can see.
We're gonna all be in jail.
Yeah, that is
infringement. We're all gonna be in jail.
That is very true. But of course, we got to see a shutout victory last night for the New England Patriots. 5 wins in a row. I want to start off with the main man himself and Rob DeLuca and what he got to see last night, aside from the Atlanta Falcons laying a goose egg, and Josh Rosen putting on a Super Bowl type performance.
I can't believe the New York Giants lost to these guys. My God. That's how I have to start. The Falcons are bad. They are awful. They are not a good NFL team. They've beaten other bad teams. That's what they've done. They've been able to stay with and beat the bad teams like the New York Giants. That's the problem that I have being a Giants fan. But here's what I saw from the New England Patriots. I saw it last week too. I've seen enough. Mac Jones is legit. He is the real deal. He is going to be a great quarterback in this league for a long time. He's proving that in his rookie year, and it's only been 10 games. So there's a lot of promise in Mac Jones. He's able to work with these other depth pieces that New England has. Like, New England doesn't really have that big star anymore. Like, it's a lot of everyone's got players. Everyone's got to carry their own weight now. Everyone knows their own role, and it works for them. It's Mac Jones has done an impressive job this season. He's the best Jones quarterback I know of in the National Football League right now. No question about that. And honestly, you know what? Another great game from him. The New England defense, an amazing game from the New England defense, pitching a shutout, a couple interceptions. I believe one was a pick 6, if I'm not mistaken. And nonetheless, I believe Kyle Van Noy, who made a couple of terrific plays last night, has now been, according to him on Twitter, he has now been asked by the NFL to submit a drug test. So that's what happens when you've struggled for a few games and then you all of a sudden go off. The NFL just wants you to test for drugs, which is why that happens to Myles Garrett on a weekly basis. But nonetheless, that in the no fun league, where if you play well, apparently you're doing drugs. That's apparently how the NFL thinks it goes, and it usually the NFL is almost always wrong. So
what grinds your gears, DeLuca? Please tell us.
No. What grinds my gears is Thursday Night Football still existing. Okay, because what are we looking at here? It was 25-0. It was a horrible game. Again, it's the curse of Thursday night. No game on Thursday is ever fun.
There was the Packers and Cardinals a couple weeks ago.
Sans that game, the one time they make a good game on Thursday Night Football, the first time in like 8 years.
Well, there was the Giants Washington football team on. That was come on, that was a great firepower matchup. But no, I think Rob's right. I mean, listen, here's my feelings on the game in terms of my fantasy football team. My opponent got 53 points from the New England Patriots defense and Nick Folk. So, not really loving the Atlanta Falcons right now. It was just pretty bad. I mean, I didn't even, none of my players even went yet. And I already have a 63% chance to lose this week. So, great. Thanks a lot, Atlanta. But Rob's exactly right on Mac Jones. I think he walked into a great situation. That's the thing, is that we made all this hoopla about how, you know, he was doing great in Alabama and the accuracy and this and that. And then, you know, the San Francisco 49ers news came up and that they went to the third pick and, oh, they might want to take Mac Jones. And instead, he went where everybody thought he was going to go, at number 15 to the Patriots. And why? It's a really good situation for him, and it sort of fits the quarterback of what Bill Belichick has coached for the past 20 years. I mean, I said it on my show earlier this week. I'm not comparing Mac Jones to Tom Brady, but in terms of how he plays his game, he is a pocket passer that exemplifies accuracy and not turning over the ball. That's literally Tom Brady. The guy is not going to go on a 20-yard run up the field. He's not going to do all these insane plays. He's not going to wow you with athleticism or insane throws. He's going to be a good game manager, not turn over the ball, and be able to not lose you a football game, basically, in that sense. They're playing good football, the Patriots, in the sense that they have a really good defense. They have a decent running game, and they're not turning over the ball. Those things equal to a really good stretch of winning. Would this be the same case for Mac Jones if he were somewhere else? I don't know, but that's why I say he walked into a really good situation. But I think he's got the offensive rookie of the year award locked up. You know, it's great to see what they have on hand, the Patriots. I think honestly they could actually be a bit of a dark horse as you go down into the latter part of the season to make a run, maybe even in the playoffs as well, because you've seen a couple of contenders in the AFC not really hit their heights in the last couple of weeks or kind of underperform. The Chiefs are the biggest one this entire season, although they had a really good week this last week. The Bills sort of had some really concerning games and a stupid loss to the Jaguars recently. So the Browns are a mess. You expected them to be really good. The Ravens looked really good, and then they got walloped by the Bengals a couple weeks ago and then didn't know how to play football, apparently, against the Dolphins. And then so you know, you got a lot of flux within the AFC, and that can lead to someone like the Patriots, who have a stable guy with Bill Belichick at the helm, a football team that's not making a lot of mistakes, and can have a defense that really keeps them in a game with anybody, can really make a run.
I think the biggest thing here is that, especially what we had brought up in the preseason, and I'm sure, Mike, you were with us or not, but if not, again, I don't want to, pat myself on the back too much, but I could tell you this is that, DeLuca knows I continuously brought up this New England Patriots team time in and time out. And it was the moment Jonnu Smith was signed, the moment Hunter Henry was signed, Matt Judon, Kyle Van Noy once again, and Stephon Gilmore was traded away because it didn't really matter. This team is not in the front, is not in the driver's seat of the AFC, but what I can tell you is that driver's seat is wide open. Yes, I'm going to double down and say that the AFC driver's seat is wide open. Why? Because exactly what Mike brought up earlier. The Buffalo Bills completely blowing it against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Then you've got the Baltimore Ravens losing it 22-10 to the Miami Dolphins last week on Thursday Night Football. Then you've got the Kansas City Chiefs, who we have no idea where they are in no man's land. They're there as well. And then there's really not much more to go off of because the AFC South is so bad. Yeah, okay, the Tennessee Titans, yeah, they're working their way up. The Indianapolis Colts, yeah, well,
No, the Titans are legit.
The Titans are legitimate, yes, but keep in mind, they do not have Derrick Henry for the remainder of the season.
It won't help their play. It won't help them. It looks good
for now. It looks good for now. We'll see how Mike Vrabel can, really adjust things, and it looks good for the most recent pair of games.
It'll hurt in the playoffs.
And it has hurt them in the playoffs. Listen, they beat the Saints 23-21. They won 6 straight games. That's the longest active streak in the NFL. Kudos to Vrabel. Kudos to Tannehill. Kudos to everybody, because they also didn't have Julio Jones. I think at one point they didn't have A.J. Brown either. They're wide receiver number 1. So they are really doing well, but the problem is that no Derrick Henry, who is the focal point of that offense, he's not there. And now they are beginning to put pieces, kind of like just filling up a puzzle with missing pieces. And, does it connect? Yeah, maybe, but how is it going to really fit together come playoff time? I don't know. And could they, right now, obviously they are the 1 seed in the AFC. How long will that last if Kansas City can gain steam? If Buffalo can come back? This is not, this driver's seat in the AFC is wide open, and I will definitely double down on that and defend my remark there, because I simply do not see a team that can run away with the, with an AFC title. I don't see it yet.
It's hard. Yeah.
And I want to look back at an outlook of week number 10. And Mike, I want your thoughts before we get to DeLuca on what your biggest takeaway from week number 10 was before we make our picks for week number 11.
I mean, overall, there were a lot of interesting things that you learned as I'm trying to recall the week. I mean, there was some really good games and really good stuff that you learned. I mentioned about Browns before and how much of a mess they are in general last week. I know we already had the Patriots played on Thursday night, but the Browns, it's just sad with the Browns of where they are. Kind of looked like a team that was finally starting to ascend. This has been a team that's really, I mean, they've been god-awful for so many years. Last year is kind of like Baker Mayfield's coming of age. You looked like this team it looks like it's finally got the semblance of starting to go somewhere. Their defense, they spent a lot of high draft picks on to really improve that and make that a great young, sound defense that can really propel them in the AFC. And it's just not gone according to plan. The defense has been terrible. Baker Mayfield's not even playing 100%, so I know he's not exactly playing up to his best, but take it into the context too that he's playing injured. The whole drama with Odell Beckham Jr. and then the fallout of that relationship, seeing him gone. And I mean, did anybody really win that trade significantly between the Giants and Browns? Looking back on it now after the last couple of years, I don't think anybody really won out on that, even though the Giants got some solid players, and they probably got a little bit of a head case out of there with Odell, even though he can be an uber talented player. He has struggled with injuries. But I think the conversation is now, especially as the contract looms, is Baker Mayfield good enough long term for this Browns team? And I think it's the obsession for a team in the for the state of a team that they've been for so long to want to have that. You look around the AFC and you see all these young glitz and glamour quarterbacks, whether it's Josh Allen, who could completely change a game with an insane play, Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson, and Cleveland feels that Baker Mayfield needs to stand up to that, be that sort of guy, and be that sort of talent. Also, that he was picked number 1 as well. But I think Cleveland's got to realize that, listen, Baker Mayfield may just never be in that conversation. And that's not exactly a terrible thing. That doesn't mean you have to throw him away or him not, go somewhere else and his future in the NFL be in doubt. That's not exactly a bad thing. You can still win with Baker Mayfield. I'm supremely confident of that. But I think people have to temper their expectations of him being this ultra supreme talent, that he's going to be a top 10 quarterback in this league, that he's going to rise in those quarterback rankings in the AFC. I just always put this analogy out because I'm a Giants fan on the East Coast, and it's just easy to say it in my head to compare it this way, is that, look, the Giants for 10, 15 years had Eli Manning. and you won 2 Super Bowls. Was Eli Manning ever the best quarterback in the NFL in a single season? Not even close.
Not even close.
Not even close. He'll still go down as a Hall of Famer. He still pulled off probably, 2 of the best Super Bowl victories in a while over the GOAT. I know Joey's got a hand in that too with his buddy Nick Foles in there.
That's right.
But he was never the best at any point in the league and one of the best quarterbacks or whatnot. He was very solid. And I think that that's what ultimately Baker Mayfield can be, just what the Giants had with Eli Manning. A very solid quarterback that you can still be able to win with the right pieces and the right moves.
And the cool thing also, obviously, with Eli Manning being known for being best known for his memes and his silly faces that he makes, aside from the 2 Super Bowls, you hit the nail right on the head there. Rob DeLuca, I want to go to you now in terms of, this upcoming week. And, just before we get into our picks, I want to know your thoughts on really a game that you have your eye on in week number 11, because it's going to be yet another good week in the NFL, of course, just before Thanksgiving. There's so many now good games. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, after yesterday, I think all of the divisions are beginning to get tighter and tighter. San Francisco winning last week against the LA Rams is definitely something notable on Monday night. They're going up against Jacksonville. So, some teams in certain survivor pools certain people in survivor pools may have them. And I think that, just by seeing what this team can do in the NFC West, we brought this up. Seattle might just finish in the basement, and kudos to Ian if that is the case, because he did say that in the divisional preview. DeLuca, what are your Week 11 thoughts and heading into the 11th week of the NFL season?
A game to look at, I would say, is definitely Cowboys Chiefs from Kansas City. Cowboys are 7-2. Dak having a great season, and as much as everyone in this chat here hates it, it's just the truth. Everyone knew if Dak was going to be healthy again, he'd be fine.
And can the Chiefs build on their last week?
The Chiefs build, yeah. And can the Chiefs build out after a big win in Vegas to try to get themselves back to form? They are favored to win the game by 2.5, actually. So that's an interesting thing to look at there. Another game I'm interested in seeing here, looking through the schedule besides Cowboys and Chiefs, is another Saints Eagles from Philly. These are 2 tight teams right now. Saints are 5-4. The Eagles are 4-6. Games in Philly. Eagles have a slight favor to them on the spread board there, and it's real interesting to see because the Saints,
because Alvin Kamara is out.
Calvin Kamara is out, so it's not looking good for the Saints right now, especially no Jameis Winston at quarterback there. So it really leaves a lot to be desired. A game people could get fooled by is Lions-Browns. I think that game's going to be closer than the 12-point spread suggests, honestly, just because the Browns have a little something to prove right now after getting shellacked by New England last week. So there's that. A sneaky game to look out for is Bills-Colts from Buffalo, because Buffalo is now 6-3. New England, after winning last night, is 7-4. So if they lose this game to the Colts, New England takes over first place for the first time in what feels like forever, because it's just been Bills dominated ever since Tom Brady left. Yeah. So you got to wonder, can the Bills hold off a pesky Colts team here to maintain first place? And the Bills haven't even had their bye week yet. So every win is going to keep mattering, because now New England hasn't had their bye week yet. So
the
New
Bills
England
technically still have a half game.
Right.
Bills would technically still have a half game.
Right. So that's something to those are a couple of games to look at. And then I guess a big one here in the AFC West, I guess, is Sunday Night Football. Chargers-Steelers. Chargers are not out of the race yet, but they've lost a few in a row. So they really got to try to bounce themselves back.
Please.
And right now we've seen it. The Steelers are garbage without Big Ben. They are absolute trash. That is unbelievable that you are at home against the winless Lions and can't come away with a win. awful.
Nobody wanted to win that game.
Nobody deserved to win that game either. Yeah, there's not anything out there that says that someone wanted to win that football game. I don't even know why.
I mean,
That is very true.
It's funny. We learned that the Steelers, for a time we thought, oh, they could be decent. With Big Ben, they're not really going anywhere. They're kind of bad already. Without him, they're super, super bad.
They're one of the worst. Yeah.
They really are. And you know what? It's a perfect segue into our picks last week.
Oh, good luck.
And from just by looking at the Eastern Observer's picks, obviously, for those that are just joining us for the first time, our survivor pool between the Primetime Rundown and the Essential Wrestling Podcast, the two main shows here on this network. We got to see Larry Protakowicz, Casey Bryant, Mike Szabo, Ian Schraier. They all got nice green check marks in the last week's contest. And, of course, the big X's that went across the board: Travis Severance, John Smith, Ryan Joy, Al Carl, and of course both DeLuca and myself in the Primetime Rundown division. But just by looking at obviously the Steelers in an NFL survivor pool, a tie is technically a loss. So that really did hurt us, but we did gain 2 games on the Essential Wrestling Podcast squad. So now
we're coming.
With that being said, let us go to Mike Szabo first, and then we'll get to DeLuca, and then we'll close out here just before we get to Los Angeles Times sports columnist Helene Elliott. She will be with us at around 8:30 Eastern time, 5:30 on the West Coast if you are watching there and waiting for Helene to join us. Mike Szabo, your pick here this week for week number 11 is...
I know we usually they just talked about the 49ers and Jaguars. I feel that's sort of a little bit of a sneaky trap game that everybody's going to jump on, but I kind of feel funky with that. I'm going to go with the Ravens over the Bears. The Bears have devastating news of losing Khalil Mack for the whole season. That's huge, of course, for them. I think the Ravens, who have been a little up and down here and there, I think this is a great bounce back game for them. Not saying it'll be easy, but I think it'll be a great bounce back game for Lamar Jackson and company.
See, that's tough. I'm just gonna counter there. That's a tough one, especially where there have been also some calls for Lamar Jackson to really kind of rethink this whole MVP caliber type quarterback in Lamar Jackson. Can he still do it? Is he a one-year wonder? Is he that quarterback of the future that everyone wants to mimic? I don't know. I think this season is definitely big, but you also have to realize, though, is that his offensive line is banged up. So that is a pick that I think this week is good, but I don't know. DeLuca, do you have the Ravens too, or do you have somebody else?
No, I believe I already went with the Ravens this season, so I did. I cannot pick them again. So
that is correct.
So I looked through the schedule up and down. There are a couple games there, and of course, there are other games you want to take and you can't because you already took those teams. You think they have a little bit of an easier time, especially as it gets later in the season. But there is one team that I didn't pick yet that is in kind of a somewhat safe space. They're at home against a really rough team this year. So luckily I still had them available. And we still have to come back against the Essential Wrestling Podcast. So I'm locking in the Tennessee Titans at home over the Houston Texans. And I believe that it's going to be nice and comfortable as a lot of those 8-8, it's 8-2 versus 1-8. Very comfortable game. I'm not in the slightest bit worried. Titans will take it home.
Well. Now it's obviously very, very tough to see what's been going on my side of things. But just before we get to my pick, I want to look at Ian Schreier's pick.
Yes, of course.
His pick is going to be the San Francisco 49ers. He will be picking them over the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I remember when he texted me that, I told him, I said, that's really gutsy, because the last time I went against the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Buffalo Bills completely got dominated by them. That the entire time, Josh Allen sacked Josh Allen. It was really a cool game. And listen, that is the pick for Ian. He's got the San Francisco 49ers. And, and this is something else, too, that I was teetering back and forth with. I was teetering back between the Cleveland Browns and the San Francisco 49ers. And I said to myself, well, do I save the Niners for maybe later on when they really start to heat up? Or do I go with the Cleveland Browns against the lowly Detroit Lions who, 0-15-1, most likely, without Sean McVay for Jared Goff. And I think that is going to continue where Jared Goff will continue to lose. And I think that the Cleveland Browns will be getting their much-needed victory this week against the Lions. And I think that will be a bounce-back win for Baker Mayfield and the entire Cleveland Browns crew. And I think that really will be my pick. That is going to be my pick. The Cleveland Browns over the Detroit Lions, and I will be saving the San Francisco 49ers for down the road in our survivor pool.
Gee, Joey called our pits gutsy.
Yeah, right. Like you're coming off. You're going with the team that's coming off getting shellacked by New England, and I mean literally,
yes.
like it was 45-7.
That is correct. And you see, that's the thing though, is that when you look at a team that gets shellacked like that, right? Normally, the instinct right away is to come out hot and take down your opponent by a massive score. And they will come out hot, and that is my prediction, where they will completely come out and they will take down by, and I think it will be by 12 or 13 points, will be that.
I mean, I would hope so. It's the Lions.
And it's also the Cleveland Browns who have that capability of obtaining 30 or 40 points.
Better hope Nick Chubb's back. Otherwise, you're in trouble with that pick.
It's absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable. But as we do wait for our special guest, 2005 Elmer Ferguson honoree for the Hockey Hall of Fame and Los Angeles Times sports columnist for the Anaheim Ducks, Helene Elliott. She will be on with us shortly, good Lord willing. We do want to go over just to a quick sports update for a couple of minutes here, just until Helene logs on. We got a chance to see just a few days ago, the Staples Center out in Los Angeles is being renamed to Crypto.com Arena. And, there were a lot of people, and this includes Vanessa Bryant, the widow of Kobe Bryant, and, widow of Kobe Bryant, excuse me. And she was not too happy about it, obviously, with, having a picture of her late husband, really the house that Kobe built. And that is the truth. The Staples Center is an icon. I've been there 4 times. It's one of the best venues in all of the National Hockey League, all of the NBA. I've been to a ton of buildings in the National Hockey League, and that does include also in Southern California and Anaheim, the Honda Center. And tomorrow I'll be making my debut at the brand new UBS Arena, and we'll be seeing, obviously these different arenas. But obviously, that's not even the big thing here. I think what it comes down to is the naming rights, and that's really obviously what this is all about. And the naming rights, it is one of the richest deals. I believe actually it might be the richest naming rights deal in all of American professional sports. Wow. DeLuca, I want to go to you first. Staples Center, it's an icon. We've heard it on Like Mike when we were kids.
I never got the chance to go, and now I certainly never am. So because I'm not going into something called Crypto.com Arena. That's the thing about cryptocurrency. You're all suckers if you buy it. You are nothing but suckers. That is the biggest scam that has ever come out. Like, all you have to do is tweet about it. The Dogecoin's going to have a great day today. And guess what? It's going to have a great day today. Or you could tweet, it's going to have a bad day today, and it's going to tank. That it is literally based on how much people tweet about it. It is absurd, this crypto stuff. Same thing with those NFTs. All a bunch of garbage. And I cannot believe these things are getting naming rights now. And for 20 years, and for an icon arena like Staples Center. I will never not identify this building as Staples Center. Ever. End of that.
Really
end my rant. Go to Mike. I got nothing more to say.
Well, I mean, my take on it is, listen, we got this. We all are sentimental in this part. I know Staples Center has had great moments, but the greatest lesson in life, especially when it comes to sports, a lot of the times, is money talks, and that's as simple as it is. In 20 years from now, will the next generation be talking about the Staples Center in the same way that we talk about it? Probably not. And it's crypto.com center for them. I believe, Rob, isn't there some MLS arena or one of the arenas that the U.S. Men's national team were playing in? It's like lower.com or something stadium. It was one of the qualifying games. And I'm like listening to it on the broadcast. I'm like, what is this? A website being the name of a stadium?
It's so
It's
bad.
it's so weird. It doesn't roll off the tongue.
Having .com or .org or .anything.
Yeah, like
having a website.
I mean, they could just put crypto. Why the .com?
Yeah, the fact that honestly might be what bothers me more than anything. The fact that the .com is in there. Like, it just sounds weird. You don't need it. I would say you just Crypto Arena would actually sound kind of cool. I'm not even gonna lie, but I think it's the .com. But I also don't believe in this cryptocurrency stuff. I don't invest in it. I invest in real stocks. It's just the way to do things.
Well, the next sports update here is, and we did just notify Helene Elliott, making sure that she will be making her appearance. We'll see if we can get a response from her, hopefully sooner rather than later. But for the Anaheim Ducks fans that are on here watching us,
well, Joey, while we're on the subject of arenas, and you are in fact attending a brand new arena, why don't we delve into a little bit to that about what the New York Islanders have been doing this season, which is a whole lot of not Islanders hockey of the past 2 years.
Oh, you just want to turn the screws in right there, right away.
And you see, and you saw my face there, Mike.
I can't wait to jump in on there on you.
I thought I might have been paused. And we just got back we just got message from her saying that she will be on in a few moments, and then she could join us then. So hopefully that is sooner rather than later. But what we do know is that, just continuing our sports update, just one quick second, we were talking about early on in the Sweeney Murdy interview with Clint Frazier how really there is no value to him. Well, he was designated for assignment earlier today in a 40-man roster clearing, for this Yankee squad. So I don't know what we're going to be dealing with, but we'll see what happens there as well. Tyler Wade was also designated for assignment as well. Rougned Odor was also designated for assignment as well. So now we can finally get to what Rob DeLuca has wanted to. So we're going to do a little switcheroo in terms of our rundown. And we're going to talk about the New York Islanders because that's what Rob DeLuca brought up, of course. So that means he really wants to just, give it right to me as I get to go watch the building open tomorrow. Today, the ribbon cutting ceremony happened in front of Governor Kathy Hochul, in front of Empire State Development, in front of Oakview Group, in front of Tim Lywicki, the owner of Oakview Group, or the CEO of Oakview, Jeff Wilpon, of course, one of the
Ian's favorite person.
Exactly, the CEO of Sterling Projects, and the former Sterling Mets, of course, but Sterling Projects. In addition to, you got to see numerous congressmen, the outgoing Nassau County executive, and Laura Curran was there as well. John Ledecky was there. Gary Bettman, NHL commissioner, was there as well. Did not get any boos also. But the ribbon was cut. The ceremony was there. It's going to be a fun time tomorrow. The parking is going to be a legitimate disaster, I can tell you. But all I do know is that our good friends from the fourth period, all three of them, James Nichols, Dave Pagnotta, and Dennis Bernstein, will all be in attendance for the opening of UBS Arena.
Joey, if you run into them, make sure you let them know thanks for actually letting us know they'd be in the area.
Oh, there's no doubt. We'll definitely have to bring that up, and who knows, might just have to cut this clip and tweet at them. But let's just jump right into the Islanders here. It's an absolute disaster what's going on there. 5-6-2. They're dead last in the Metropolitan Division. I think that this is sort of a reason to panic, but I want to see what goes on later on in terms of a home schedule, because 13 games on the road is one of the longest ever in the National Hockey League. And I believe for the New York Rangers, I believe it was 11 or 12 that they had to endure when Madison Square Garden underwent, I believe, $1 billion renovation, and their building was not ready until early November. And I remember when they came off of a grueling road trip, really, just crazy stuff. And now we're seeing the captain Anders Lee, Ross the Boss, Ross Johnston in the COVID protocol, as well as Josh Bailey, who is still in Florida in COVID quarantine. And those three guys you're not going to be seeing tomorrow night in the lineup at all. And even Ross Johnston, who could potentially be a 13th forward, is not going to even be available. So we're going to see a lot of movement within Bridgeport and within the NHL club. DeLuca, let's go to you here. The Devils shellacked the Islanders a couple of about 8 days ago, back on the 11th at the Rock. What do you see there with the Islanders? Not only are they old, are things beginning to catch up with Lou Lamoriello?
Look, I have experience with Lou Lamoriello teams like this. You guys are a little old and decrepit, and there's no question about that. You got guys like Zdeno Chara on there, Andy Green running second pair minutes when they have a combined age of like 83 or something like that. So you gotta really just kind of get a little younger. But look, I really do think it has a lot to do with having 13 games on the road. So I think once the Islanders get some home games under their skin, finally the fans will be cheering for them instead of against them every game. So it'll be a good thing to see. And I still think the Islanders will be in the playoffs. I don't think there's any questions about that. It was just a rough start. They survived the road trip. Is how that would put it. 5-8. They survived the road trip. And I think that they'll start to find the edge once they're healthy again. They'll figure it all. They'll figure it all out. They'll be back in the playoffs. I would imagine comfortably. They'll find a hot streak and they'll be there. And that's just the way it'll be.
Listen, you've got a whole ladder to ride.
I know. Columbus is playing over their head. That they'll fall soon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also we'll get to Mike Szabo later on, but what we do want to do is we'd like to welcome in our special guest, because speaking about the Metropolitan Division, one of the Metro's top teams and the top team in the Metropolitan Division in the Carolina Hurricanes took down the Anaheim Ducks last night. And ladies and gentlemen, let's please welcome in Los Angeles Times sports columnist and 2005 Elmer Ferguson honoree for the Hockey Hall of Fame, Helene Elliott. Helene, thank you so much for coming on here tonight. I hope things are well out in SoCal. How are things with you?
I'm just doing great. How about you guys?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us here. And, obviously what we were talking about earlier with the 8-game winning streak, it came to a close last night against Carolina. We're seeing this Anaheim Ducks team that, they were pretty much flat on their face just a couple of years ago, and even last year as well. They're finally beginning to I don't know, is this, you tell us, is this something that may be a flash in the pan, or is this something that this team is, going to be building off of?
Well, last night's game was just a terrific game. I mean, in terms of pace, in terms of skill, in terms of goaltending, it was really just a fun game to watch, no matter which team you rooted for, or if you were a neutral observer. It was just a game you could appreciate hockey. I think what's interesting about the Ducks is that this is essentially the same team as last season. I mean, it's not like they went out and signed any big name free agents or depth players like the Kings did. This is essentially the same Ducks team as last season. That was terrible last season. A couple new assistant coaches have helped the power play and the penalty killing, made a big difference there. And I think it's a matter of maturity too. I mean, Troy Terry has just been terrific to watch, just so confident and aggressive. And, sometimes it takes a player a year or two longer to mature and for everything to click than maybe fans would like to see. I mean, fans are impatient, or we have very short attention span in society. And sometimes, though, you have to wait.
Mike Szabo, take it away.
Yeah. Hey, Helene, thanks so much for coming on. You spoke about how this really isn't that different of a team. What do you make really of the rejuvenation, if you will, of Ryan Getzlaf and really coming back to the form that we saw from him a couple of years ago, and powering this team back to this really good early start from what they were last year.
Yeah. I had a good sit down with him during training camp because, he became a free agent for last summer for the very first time in his career. And there was interest from other teams. I had a sneaky suspicion that he would stay here because his wife is from Southern California and they have a lovely home and, kids are in school and those kind of things. But I had a feeling he would stay, but he stayed not because he had to, but because he wanted to almost in a sense prove something. He wanted to make that comeback. I mean, you have to remember he was something like 22 years old when the Ducks won the Stanley Cup in 2007. And any player who has success early in their career kind of might start thinking, well, gee, this is going to happen every year. And for quite a while, the Ducks did have some very good teams that, went deep into the playoffs, went to the conference finals, but they never quite got over the hurdle again. And it was his sense that, the pieces are coming together. Certainly in September, nobody knew for sure, but I think he's been proved right. And just there's just been such a great connection between him and Troy Terry. I think Enrique has been rejuvenated as well. He had a terrible season last year. And I think there's a sense now of, this could be interesting. The kids are taking over. They're taking more responsibility. And it's just kind of been fun to watch it all evolve.
DeLuca, go ahead.
Yeah, Helene, thank you. I was just going to bring it up because as a New Jersey Devils fan, Adam Henrique always is going to hold a special place in my heart. And I was just going to say, it seems like last year, Ducks fans were calling for his head. They wanted him sent down. They wanted him cut. They wanted him gone. And now he's off to this nice start here. What has he changed about his game that he's been able to adjust now and be one of the better Ducks players on the ice right now?
I think they found a good connection with him and Getzlaf and Troy Terry. And again, I think, bringing in a couple of assistant coaches with fresh eyes has helped everybody there. I think that it's been better organized. The practices are probably a little bit better, more purposeful, for lack of a better word. But I think that there's a sense now that if something goes wrong, it's not going to snowball. That if something goes wrong, okay, we'll just do it better next time. And I think we've all seen, on teams that are in slumps, when a team gets a bad break, it just kind of becomes, okay, here's another bad break. And you start anticipating the next misfortune. And here it seems like they're like, okay, it was a bad break. Like last night, they were saying, yeah, we lost. We were mad we lost. We think we could have won this game rather than, well, they're a very good team and we came close. No, it was a sense of, we could have won this game. We had some chances early. We didn't put them away. We'll learn from this and we'll be better next time.
Yeah,
now,
I think,
Lucas,
I think that, yeah, that's 100% head on the nail. And then you brought up Troy Terry earlier. It seems like everything is just going right for him right now. He's definitely early consideration for that Calder Trophy. Outside, he's right there in the race with Lucas Raymond and Tobias Cedar. But someone I want to focus on the blue line. And we're talking about rejuvenation. What has gone right and so well for Kevin Shattenkirk? It seemed like Kevin Shattenkirk's career was going to be over after he left the New York Rangers, and nobody was sure what was going to happen to him. And this season gets started, and he's one of the leading scorers: 14 points, 10 assists, 7 of them on the power play. Why has he been so helpful to this special teams for the Ducks when it seemed like he wasn't figuring it out in New York?
Well, I have to say, though, he had a pretty bad giveaway last night on one of the goals. So let's just, let's take a deep breath here. But yeah, I mean, I think his specialty has always been power play. And if he can be effective on the power play, that so much the better. I think that the Ducks' depth on defense may prove to be a little bit of a problem. But so far, so good. So far, the goaltending has been terrific. I mean, I think John Gibson has been, he's had the right to be frustrated the last couple of years where he was subjected to some pretty high quality shots against. He was subjected
yes.
to a lot of shots against. And, people think, okay, a lot of shots against is the defenseman's fault. And we all know that's not true. I mean, a lot of fans don't really, look at it as they should, as it, it's the forwards too, who are not taking their people out. But, Gibson carried more than his share of the load for a very long time. And now at least he's getting some help. He's getting some help from the people in front of him. And, when they do need him to rescue them, he can still do that. But they're helping him more than they have done in the past.
Now, Helene, I want to go to, even though we're only about a month into the season, out here on Long Island, we've heard, and just by looking at also your resume too, you're a native New Yorker as well. You were born in Brooklyn, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure, you've heard about some of possibly the rumors or anything along the lines, maybe with Hampus Lindholm and Lou Lamoriello might wanting to, take a stab at him and take on a contract of his stature, because Hampus Lindholm is in his final year. Because of what we're seeing now with this Anaheim Ducks team, Helene, is it early, or is it too early to say that this team would be, wise to move a Lindholm, or maybe even begin to buy with all of the cap space that they've got? And we haven't even discussed also Ryan Kessler's long-term injured reserve money. I think that's like $6 or $7 million. That's just dangling there as well.
Yeah, I think that sometimes fans don't look at the full picture. I mean, I understand if you're, you want Hampus Lindholm on your team, but I think right now, the way the Ducks are playing, why would they sell? Why would they let him go?
Right.
Also, I'm not privy to, I don't know if they're talking to him behind the scenes and talking to his agent and, trying to work on a deal. That's certainly possible. Remember too that the Ducks had a little bit of upheaval recently with Bob Murray resigning as general manager.
Yep.
And, Jeff Solomon, he took over as interim general manager, and he's only been with the organization since May. So, the guy's still, getting a feel for what he was getting a feel for what he was supposed to do. Now he has extra duties on top of that. So, I don't think they're going to make any major decisions like that for a while, and certainly not before they have to. And again, they're playing so well now. Why not go for it? Why sell off your assets if you don't have to?
Well, and now that, it's very funny that you bring something up in terms of selling assets off. And we continuously heard in the rumor mill about, this Anaheim Ducks team potentially going after a Jack Eichel and maybe selling, a Trevor Zegras off, or maybe a Jamie Drysdale or something along those lines. Let me ask you this, Helene, and I know obviously a lot of these players, they're all professional. They don't look at the headlines. They don't look at the rumors, anything on social media like that. But, maybe let's just say hypothetically one or two of them got a chance to, see that. Could you think that might have maybe, put a spark into them and say, all right, you know what, maybe, my name was thrown around out there. That's going to push me to play better. And the results are now showing?
Honestly, I don't think there's any chance that Zegras or Drysdale gets moved. Sorry, that's just not happening.
Right.
Drysdale's a franchise defenseman.
No?
Pardon me?
Even if it was for an Eichel, was never in the conversation?
Drysdale is a foundation defenseman. He's a franchise defenseman. I mean, you don't trade a franchise defenseman unless there's something huge coming back the other way. And forgive me, as good as Jack Eichel has been, he's a guy with coming off surgery that you don't know how long his recovery is going to be, and you don't know the extent of his recovery. You don't trade a Drysdale for an Eichel, and I don't know that was ever a possibility, to be honest with you. One of the blessings of social media is that people can communicate a lot and often, and one of the curses is that people come up with things that are just complete fantasies that they would love to see their team. I want I want Zegras for a bunch of pucks. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Let's be slightly realistic here, as much as you might want to, daydream. And frankly, I don't think that any player is going to be affected by, particularly a young player. I could see like an older player might be affected by trade rumors because they have maybe they have kids who, hear it in school from other kids, or their wives might hear it and say, I don't want to move, and, that kind of thing. But I think younger players are probably less affected by trade rumors than older players who have homes and, kids in school and that kind of thing. I really don't think young players pay very much attention to that.
Rob DeLuca.
Helene, if I may, before we let you go. So let's say the Ducks do just stand pat. I think like the way they're playing right now, there's no reason to do anything. Like they're performing very well. John Gibson's has been one of the best goaltenders in the league for the past couple of years now. I think things are finally starting to click for them. So let's just say nothing happens right now. Let's say they keep performing this way. The question, what do they have to do to keep this up? What is it they have to, maybe something they got to improve on, or what more do they have to keep consistent to allow this kind of play to continue?
Well, again, I think they might be best served by a little bit more depth on defense, a little bit more physicality there. Obviously they have Manson, but I think they need somebody who can be a top four guy. It's so early right now and things are still sorting themselves out.
Yeah.
Do you really think that some of the teams that are playing as well as they are right now will play well over 82 games?
Right.
I think there's going to be peaks and valleys. And I think, around Christmas time, maybe we'll have a better idea of trends and, who's really kind of, established themselves as consistent. I mean, that's another thing too, is that over the years, you'll see that young teams have problems with consistency because young players coming out of college or coming out of junior have not played this many games and this kind of a compressed schedule. And while it's easy to be excellent if you're playing, 3 games a week in college or 4 games a week, it's a lot tougher when you're playing against big guys in the NHL. I think that particularly for a young team, you get a better read around Christmas when maybe you're close to the halfway point. You see how guys have held up over back-to-back games or, 4 and 7 night stretches or something like that. And I'd really be surprised if you see any major moves around the league until Christmas or later because so many teams are so close right now. And there are some that I think are going to fall back. I think San Jose is going to fall back. I think everybody's going to just kind of wait and see how things sort themselves out.
Well, that's definitely a pretty good outlook there from you, Helene. Helene, ladies and gentlemen, Helene Elliott, Los Angeles Times sports columnist, covers the Anaheim Ducks, and also, of course, 2005 Elmer Ferguson honoree from the Hockey Hall of Fame. Helene, thank you so much for joining us here, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 6 p.m. where you are out on the West Coast. We really appreciate it, and thank you for coming on here, native New Yorker.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Well, guys, let's keep moving forward here, and let's get to our kudos because can't believe already time is of the essence. Time is up, and I'm glad also that we do not have to talk about the Islanders anymore. Good, that's fantastic.
Back-to-back conference finals, and he never wants to talk about them again.
I don't want to hear nothing more. That is completely it. Guys, let's keep on moving forward here. Let us go to our kudos here. DeLuca, let's start with you.
Yeah, no, simple. Let's keep the vibes good. Thank all the viewers. Have a very beautiful and happy Thanksgiving with your families. It's going to be a great holiday. Weather doesn't look too bad for now. Weather can always change, but nonetheless, happy Thanksgiving. We're not going to be here next week. We're going to let you enjoy the holiday with your family, and we'll see you in December, ready to go for a couple more shows before we close out 2021.
Mike Szabo, what do we got?
Well, my kudos, I already alluded to it at the top of the show, and I got the nice shirt here as well too, and that's of course for the not even just the St. John's women's soccer team, but the St. John's soccer teams overall, and both programs. First time they're both in the NCAA tournament since 2013. Both doing very successful. The men's team got their tournament started off last night. Took down Princeton 1-0, so they're on to the second round and taking on number 1 seed Oregon State on Sunday night on the road. So big matchup there. Trying to get to the Sweet 16, and then of course the St. John's women's soccer team, who have put on a magical, unbelievably magical season. You talk about that run that I talked about a couple of weeks ago, going through the Big East tournament, getting to the championship game for the first time since '94. Unfortunately falling, but still putting up a valiant effort against Georgetown. Deservingly got into the NCAA tournament and have beat Brown last week and pulled off a great victory tonight against Samford, a team that coming into the game, the Samford Bulldogs had won 13 straight games, and St. John's goes on the road into Durham, North Carolina, and breaks that in a penalty shootout victory. Of course, penalty shootout victories you're always nervous with, but it went very well. St. John's were able to knock all of theirs in 3-0 shootout victory. And they're moving on to the Sweet 16 for the first time in women's soccer program history, and now moved up to 14 wins on the season, just one off of tying their program record from the Rachel Daly season of 15 wins. It's just absolutely fantastic stuff coming, especially from the St. John's women's soccer team. Great stuff to see. All my kudos goes out to them, and good luck against them. Good luck for them in their next matchup, I believe on Sunday at 6 p.m. when they'll face the winner of 1 seed Duke or Memphis. That's currently going on right now, with Duke winning 1-0 in the second half.
Oof. Well, what I can say though is that the moment you said Rachel Daly, the moment you said a 15-year season or 15-win season, that those two together, and then when you talk about St. John's and that current season as an alum, it gives you chills, because all you hear is Rachel Daly, and once you hear that, you know that you are in good company. Well, I'm going to go a little east on on the Cross Island Parkway and the Grand Central, and head towards UBS Arena, and that's where we'll be tomorrow. And that is my kudos. It finally has happened, New York Islanders fans. We have a home for the first time since never. It has always been the Nassau Coliseum, the old barn, and this year marks the first time that the New York Islanders have their long-term solution. And you can thank, every single one of you can thank the late, great Charles Wang, who may not have been the best owner, but he wanted to keep this team in New York. And if it were not for Charles Wang, this team would not be here. It would be either in Quebec City, or it would potentially be in Kansas City as well. So kudos to Charles Wang. Kudos to the entire Islanders organization. And tomorrow begins a brand new chapter in New York Islanders history. And it's going to be a fun one against the Calgary Flames, albeit the COVID-19 scares that are going around the entire locker room that has taken down, as we brought up earlier, Ross Johnston and Josh Bailey, as well as Anders Lee. So that will conclude our show. Let us keep on rolling here in terms of our credits. Ladies and gentlemen, let's obviously show you the primetime rundown. Of course, you can take a peek every single Friday night, with the exception of next week. Of course, we will be off for Halloween, for Thanksgiving. Be sure to subscribe to us and listen to us at any time on the following platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and of course, if you want to see our gorgeous faces, go to YouTube and search I-95 Sports Network and or Eastern Observer. Keeping going as well for we'll get to that in a minute, but tomorrow we continue our partnership with the New York Professional Scouts Association and the Eastern Observer as we bring you episode number 80 of the Scouts Minute, and we will be featuring Matt Chesney, who is was a former Boston Red Sox pro scout. He is the one who signed former Hall of Famer Mo Vaughn as well. So we will definitely be speaking about that tomorrow. That will be coming your way at 11 a.m. Eastern time right here on the Eastern Observer. And of course, the Essential Wrestling Podcast, those guys will have a week off. They will be back on the 30th as well for Thanksgiving. Obviously, they will be off, and they'll be back on Tuesday, November 30th, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern time right here on the Eastern Observer. Their show is presented to you by ProWrestlingPick'em.com. Be sure to join Al Carl, John DeCani, John Smith, Gary Mehefe, Ryan Joy, and the entire crew for all of wrestling needs that you may enjoy. So, Rob DeLuca, Mike Zabo. Mike, thank you so much for coming on here as always. We really appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. As always, great to be with you guys.
Well, and of course, as for Ian Schraier, the entire Eastern Observer crew, obviously Ian Schraier is on assignment tonight. For Rob DeLuca, myself, and the entire Eastern Observer crew and Blackjack Media Group, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We'll see you next time.